Hey y'all, welcome back to MamaFin's Kitchen. It has been a hot second since we have seen each other, and things have just been a little cuckoo in my world, and it's been a little while, so I missed y'all, but thanks for tuning back in and watching. It is starting to turn cool here in Kansas. It's late September, mid to late September, and actually today is the first day of fall. Fall is officially here. Put out your pumpkins, girls, put out all your stuff, and get your fall stuff out and get your cozy clothes out. Ergo, hoodie today, feeling real casual. So with fall coming comes the things that we all love: soups and stews and chilies and things like that, and baking things like muffins and breads and cinnamon rolls. So a few weeks ago I had made a batch of chili on the very first cool day in Kansas, and generally what happens is the very first cool day I go, ooh, I want to make chili. My husband came home from work that day and he said, guess we're having chili and cinnamon rolls tonight, aren't we? And I said, you guessed it, turns cool outside, we make chili, and when we have chili, we have cinnamon rolls. So those of you that grew up in Kansas and Nebraska and maybe some other surrounding states know that a favorite school lunch combination was chili with cinnamon rolls on the side. And so when we make chili in our house, we make cinnamon rolls. It just goes together. You don't eat them like dip it in it or anything like that. You just, when you have chili for supper, then for dessert you have cinnamon rolls, and they make an amazing combination. So we're gonna make cinnamon rolls today, and I'm gonna show you how to do it from scratch. It's not hard, it just takes a little time. So give yourself a little time. If you're working from home, it's a great thing to kind of start in the afternoon, let it raise, cut them out, let them raise, and then you'll be ready to put them in the oven right about the time that you're finishing dinner. So we are going to make these. This is my mama's recipe. And the funny thing is that we're gonna make cinnamon rolls out of this. You can also use this dough to make dinner rolls. So if you wanna make Parker House rolls or anything like that, you would, instead of making cinnamon rolls out of these, you would just make dinner rolls. So this dough is not particularly sweet, so it can go either direction. If you make cinnamon rolls out of it, we're gonna add the filling. So the things that we're gonna need tonight for our recipe is you're gonna need yeast. Now, if you use a lot of yeast, I recommend that you buy it in bulk. I buy it in bulk out at Sam's Club or at my local little Sugar Creek country store in St. Mary's, Kansas. And I buy it in a big pouch, vacuum sealed. So once I open that pouch, I keep it in a little mason jar in the refrigerator to keep it fresh longer. But you can buy it in bulk. If you don't use a lot of yeast around your house, you are more than welcome to buy the little envelopes and the little packages that you get at the store. If you are going to use the packages, this particular recipe will take 2 packages. If you buy it in bulk, then you know that a package means that you need 2 1/4 teaspoons. This is my favorite little gadget because I make a lot of bread and a lot of dough and a lot of yeast breads. So I use a lot of yeast, so I buy it in bulk. But this little jobby measures 2 1/4 teaspoons. So basically 1 scoop of this is your package of yeast. I got this from King Arthur Flour a long time ago. So get you one of these if you're going to be making a lot of dough on a regular basis, because you'll save yourself a heartache and trying to remember how much yeast equals 1 package. 1 scoop of this equals 1 package. So you'll need yeast. You'll need 2 packages of yeast. You will need 2 cups of hot water, which we will talk about. You'll need a 1/2 cup of sugar, just good old white sugar. You'll need 2 teaspoons of salt. In this particular case, I use good old-fashioned iodized salt because this is my grandma's recipe, handed down to my mother, and that's what she would have used. She would use iodized salt, so if I wanted to taste like grandma's, I use iodized. However, if you don't have iodized and all you have is sea salt, use the sea salt, it'll be just fine. We're gonna need 6 1/2 to 7 cups of all-purpose flour. And then you'll need 1 egg, and you'll need 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. So let's get started. We're gonna measure out our yeast. So 2 packages of yeast. So you can either tear open 2 packages and put it in there, or measure out 2 of your 2 1/4 teaspoons. So it would be 4 1/2 teaspoons to equal 2 packages. Put your yeast in a large bowl, and this is gonna take some room, so make sure you get yourself a large mixing bowl. Put your yeast in there, and then we're gonna measure out 2 cups of hot water, along with a 1/2 cup of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Your water, you want it to be between 110 to 115 degrees. That should be hot enough that you can run your arm under it, or like an elbow, without it burning you, but it's not so tepid that it's not going to activate your yeast. So a good way that I like to do it is I'll measure out 2 cups of water, and then with the sugar and the salt, I put it in a small mixing bowl, and I'm going to pop it in the microwave for just about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Get it nice and hot, but not too hot. If you get it too hot, you will kill your yeast, so please don't do that. So we're going to measure out 2 cups of hot water. So let my water get hot there for just a second. And at the same time, we're going to measure out our sugar. We need half a cup of sugar. Half a cup of white sugar. Then we want 2 teaspoons of salt. While our water's running and getting hot in the sink. 2 teaspoons of salt. And our 2 cups of hot water. If you want to check your water to see how hot it is when you're running it there in the sink, do not just stick your hand under it. Your hand can take a hotter water. It's kind of like doing a baby bottle. Stick your wrist under it or an elbow, something like that, so that you don't mistake somewhat hot water for really hot water. I'm just going to give this a little stir here. We're going to pop him in the microwave for just about a minute. Get him a little hotter. And while that's going, we're going to measure out our vegetable oil. We need a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. And let's talk about oil for just a second. While your oil, I just use plain vegetable oil in this one, but if you have infused olive oils, say you have an orange infused olive oil, you can absolutely use that and it will impart some really fantastic flavors into your recipe. It's great. It's wonderful. By all means, do it. And it does, then you can put an orange glaze on it, but tonight we're just going to do plain dough with the cinnamon filling, and then we're going to put a maple frosting on top of these, and it will be delicious and very fallish. But you can absolutely twist this to do orange, lemon, etc. if you want to, or just plain vanilla. But if you want to use some infused olive oils, it's a great way to impart some flavor. So we've got our oil sitting in there. Go ahead and crack your egg into that oil. Get him all together. That egg looks a little suspect. I'm going to get rid of that egg because he looks a little weird and a little suspect. I don't think it's good. So we're going to get rid of that egg and I'm going to remeasure my oil and my egg. When in doubt with your eggs, y'all, don't hesitate. I'd rather throw out an egg if I think it's bad and it didn't smell quite right, so we're gonna pitch him. He did not seem good, so we're gonna get rid of that egg. We're gonna measure out our 1/4 cup of oil again. I'd rather waste a 1/4 cup of oil in an egg than make somebody sick. Let's try this again with this egg. Oh yeah, you look so much better. That other egg just looked a little suspect, y'all. So we're going to whisk this together real quick. Just like that. And then our hot water is done over here. We're going to grab that. Going to give it a quick little stir again just to make sure that sugar and salt was dissolved in the bottom. And then we're going to pour this hot water right into our yeast, just like that. Happy day. You can whisk and kind of whisk that around. You're dissolving that yeast. It takes just a second or so. And then we're going to add our oil and egg mixture right in there. Just like that. Give that a good whisk. We're going to start adding some flour. So we need between 6 to 7 cups of flour. Just good old all-purpose flour. I'm using Hudson cream flour from right here in Kansas. But get yourself, start in here with about 3 cups. And we're going to whisk that together. It'll still be somewhat loose as you're doing this, but this gives you a good opportunity to get a lot of that flour mixed right in with the whisk here. Get your arm workout in for the day. You can see it's still really loose, but that's what we want because we want to get that flour incorporated. And now we're going to set this whisk aside. And we're going to add in 3 more cups of flour. Measuring cup. Now you'll notice I just have a big tablespoon here. And we're just going to stir together this flour. It'll take you a minute or so to get this stirred in here. But this dough, as you notice, comes together pretty quick. This doesn't take a lot of work here. The work will come here in a minute when we go to knead this stuff. And you'll see it's kind of crumbly, but kind of sticky looking too. And there's some flour loose down in there. That's all right. We are gonna just get ready to flop this right out onto our pastry cloth. So I have a pastry cloth sitting here, and a pastry cloth is fantastic for working dough and stuff like that. We're going to take another bit of flour and sprinkle it on top of this pastry cloth, and we're going to dump our dough right out on here. Now, this is the moment where if you've got any jewelry on, like a wedding ring, something like that, take it off, set it aside for a little bit because you're going to get real messy and it's going to get flour and dough all in it. So don't do that. All right. So if you've got jewelry on, set it aside for now. But this is also your opportunity to take out some aggression. Making dough is one of my favorite stress relievers. So you notice that I just sprinkled a little more flour on top there. We're going to knead this dough. And kneading is going to activate the gluten in this dough and will cause it to rise. So you'll see that as I'm kneading it, you say, well, I don't even know how to knead dough. Okay, so I want you to take the palm of your hand and I want you to use the palms. Don't use your fingertips. I want you to use your palms. Use this section of your hand. And I want you to take it and fold it in half and push forward with it. Fold it in half and push forward. And then I want you to fold down from the top and push forward. Fold in from the side, push forward. And just continue to rotate and do that. Okay, and then you can rotate your dough every once in a while and you'll get a rhythm. I like to go over, 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 and then just rotate it over, 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 over. Okay, and don't worry, you see that there's some dough fragments underneath of here on my pastry cloth. I ain't gonna hurt a thing. We'll just throw those away. They're just not mixed in here. It's quite all right. But you'll notice that our dough is looking better. It's looking less sticky. It's looking more together. And as you start to work this, you'll feel it start to get more and more elastic. But this is why this is really great stress relief. Just push all those frustrations out from the day. If you've had a real crappy day at work, if the kids are driving you crazy, this is a really great way to take out some aggression. But activate those glutens and you'll feel the dough is warm to your touch from that warm water, and the yeast, it'll be warm to your touch. That's good. It's the way you want it. But you can see we're getting way more smooth in the way that our dough looks. And there's not a lot hanging off your hands. You might have a little bit on your hands that you'll have to wash off. But if it's still real sticky, just gradually add a little more flour. Like if you have sticky spots or stuff when you're first doing it, just add a little bit more flour. Just don't add too much flour. Just do it a little at a time. So we're gonna knead this. You wanna knead it until it's fairly smooth. Usually takes a few minutes or so. But you'll feel when that dough gets to a good spot where he's no longer sticky. He kind of feels good in your hands. It's got some good bounce back when you push on it, but he just bounces right back. That means those glutens are nice and activated in there. It's getting good elasticity. That's fantastic. So once you get it all nice and kneaded together, you're gonna have this nice little piece of dough. Just like that, okay? So we want to let this raise. We're gonna let this raise until it's about double, okay? Doubled in size. It takes about an hour, depends on how warm your house is and what kind of how warm it is in your kitchen. You want to put this in a non-drafty place, nice warm, non-drafty place. Best thing to do is take that bowl that you mixed up your stuff in, wash it out. I have 2 of them, so I just have a second one sitting here, but wash that out really well. Get rid of all that dough mix in there, and then spray it with Pam. And then we're going to take this dough and we're just going to sit it right down in there. Plop him in on top of that Pam and then flip him over. So he's a little bit greased on top, just a little bit. Mine happens to have a lid. If yours doesn't have a lid, just put a tea towel right over the top. You can just put a tea towel over it. But if you happen to have one that has a lid, just put the lid on, push the air out, and let him raise. We're just going to let it sit now for an hour until this is double in size, okay? We'll come back and then we'll make out our rolls. Earlier today, I made a batch of rolls, or I made a batch of dough. I did a half-size batch, so we really did not need 2 dozen cinnamon rolls sitting around this house. But I made a half batch of dough, so we'll fast forward a little bit, and you'll see how we make out the rolls, okay? All right, so just a couple things while our dough is raising that I kind of want to talk to you about. One of the things is when you go to make these out into cinnamon rolls, you'll want to have some brown sugar, some cinnamon, and some white sugar. The cinnamon and the white sugar, I just use equal parts. Put that together and then get yourself also 1 stick of butter and set it out on your countertop like earlier in the day and let it get nice and soft to room temperature because you'll use that as well. Like I said, you'll want a 9x13 pan that is pammed. And then for the glaze, we're going to use some butter. We're going to use some maple flavoring and just powdered sugar. And maybe just a little bit of milk. So when we go to make our glaze, those are the items that you'll need: is powdered sugar, maple extract, or maple flavoring, which you can get at Walmart or Kroger in the spice section, and then a little bit of butter and a little bit of milk. So those things you'll want for your glaze later when we go to frost these little boogers. So get those things kind of ready and put together. But the one thing I want to tell you about yeast breads and yeast doughs, do not let them scare you. People are terrified of yeast doughs all the time. And I think they're afraid because they're afraid that they might fail, that they'll kill the yeast and that they might fail. Don't be afraid, give it a shot. Because homemade bread and homemade like pizza dough and cinnamon rolls, it's really fantastic. And it really just kind of comes from the heart. If you make a pan of them, take them over to people, it's amazing what it can do for somebody's spirit. So give it a whirl, give it a try. Like you can see when we made the dough out, it doesn't take any time at all to make that dough out. What takes time is for it to raise. So just give yourself time. Normally, if you go start to finish, from the time you start the dough till the time you can take those rolls out of the oven, it's about 3 hours. So give yourself time, and that's usually why people don't do it, is because it takes time. But right now, while we're all working from home and stuff like that, you can make the dough out, let it raise, make those rolls out, let them raise the second time, and you'll have homemade cinnamon rolls for your family in the evenings. And all right, so we are done letting our dough rise for its first raise, the first proofing, and it's now at about double. So it looks really beautiful. It is doubled in size, and again, this was just a half size batch that I did earlier so that it could raise while we were doing the other stuff. So this is half of what you would normally see. Yours will be about even double this size when you do it. But I did a half size recipe so I could have not a gazillion rolls laying around. So we want to go ahead and make this out into our cinnamon rolls. And in order to do that, I want you to get a pastry cloth or a floured surface. If you have like a floured butcher block board or anything like that, or a floured countertop, but really a pastry cloth works beautifully for this. And then we want to put a little bit of flour out onto that, just so that it doesn't stick. Then we're going to turn our dough out onto it. There we go, just like that. Looks beautiful, and you can see it's kind of got nice little bubbles in it, little air bubbles from where it has raised, and that's beautiful. So I'm just kind of forming this into a little bit of a rectangle, as you can see, and we're just going to roll this out very simply. We're going to lightly flour the top of it so it doesn't stick to our rolling pin. Then I want you to just gently roll this out into a rectangle. And again, this is a half a batch of dough. So my rectangle is going to be a little smaller because I'm only going to make about 6 cinnamon rolls out of this. Normally you would make 12, and so your rectangle would be a lot bigger than this. So we're just going to kind of gently pull it into keeping it kind of a rectangle shape, just like that. And you want your dough about between 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick when you roll it out. Don't get it too thin. You want nice, generous cinnamon rolls. Then take that stick of softened butter that we had earlier, and we're going to just dollop that out. And then we're going to spread that nice soft butter across our dough, just like so. Just like that. For the full recipe, you'll use a whole stick of butter. For this half recipe, we're just using half a stick of butter. Nice and soft, you can just smear that around. Like so. And then I want you to take your brown sugar, and we're just going to sprinkle this with brown sugar. Right on top. You don't have to measure it. Just grab it out with nice clean hands out of the bag and just crumble it right on top. A nice little even layer. Right on top of that butter. Ooh, good goodness. And make sure that you get your butter and your fillings nice and to the edge. You don't want any cinnamon rolls on the end that don't have any of the good stuff. So just pat that out into a nice little even layer. Just like so. And then I want you to take a cinnamon sugar mixture. I keep mine already made in an old cinnamon container that I get from Sam's. But all you want to do is mix equal parts of cinnamon and sugar, and then you're going to sprinkle that on top. I go through a lot of cinnamon and sugar in my house, so we just do it in this, and I keep it in my cupboard this way. Makes great cinnamon toast too in the mornings. But then you just want to sprinkle that on top, but just equal parts cinnamon and sugar. Sprinkle that on the top, just like so, and then we're going to gently roll this up. So the way you start this is just barely pull this up and over to get it started. And you're just going to ever so gently roll it up. And you'll notice that I'm rolling this and kind of keeping it tight as I go, but I'm rolling it with the long side this way and my short side this way. Now, when you're getting down to the end here, just take it, roll in just a little bit, and pinch that seam together. Kind of seal it a little bit, just like so. And then just tuck him in. And then we're going to cut these into our cinnamon rolls. Like I said, this is a half-size batch. Normally, your rolls, with doing a dozen of them, I put them in a 9x13 pan, but because this is a half batch, I'm just going to put it in an 8-inch cake round. So I'm going to grease this with a little bit of Pam, and then we're going to cut these rolls, and I'm going to show you the super secret trick to cutting and having non-squished cinnamon rolls. We don't want squished cinnamon rolls now, do we? Because you want them to be nice and round, and the way to do that is, you know, those little bits of dental floss that they give you at the dentist in the little containers. Well, those are fantastic for travel. Number one, if you're traveling, put it in your travel kit for flossing. But also, if it's the unflavored kind, it works wonders for cutting cinnamon rolls. These off, and then all you're going to do is you're going to slide it under your rolls. And if you want, kind of eyeball it and kind of make a mark where you think about halfway is. And then you're just going to do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We're just going to make 6 cinnamon rolls here. So just slide it under your dough, wiggle them across there, take them to the center, and just cross those pieces. Boom. And it's going to cut your dough so easy without squishing it. So you won't squish it like you would have with a knife. And if you're trying to do that with a knife, you're going to squish it every day of the week. So then we're just going to cut this other section into thirds. Because like I said, we're doing a half batch. So normally you'd cut it in half, and then you'd cut that half in half, and then do it in thirds. Just make it easy on yourself to do it that way, doing the mental math. But this way, just kind of eyeball it, chop them into thirds, and we're going to put him right down into that pan. We're going to cut these. Now, we're going to let these raise a second time. We want these to let these raise until they're double. So about 30 more minutes or so, 30 minutes to an hour or so, we're going to let these boogers raise. And don't worry if they don't fill your pan, because they're going to raise and they're going to fill this pan. So don't worry about it. If they're not touching right at the moment, they'll touch here in a little while after they raise. So get those in the pan, and then we're going to set them aside and let them raise until they're double. Okay, so just let them raise until they're double. Should be about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how warm your location is. But probably about an hour should be good. But check them at 30 minutes and see if they're raised to double or not. But we're just going to cover them with a tea towel and set them aside and let them raise until they're double. Okay. Hey y'all, okay, so we're back, and our rolls have been raising now for about an hour, and you should see these. They look fantastic. So this is our half batch. So here's our 7, and they have raised to be nice and double and nice and poofy and delicious, and whew, they look so good. Okay, so we're gonna put these into a 350-degree oven that's already preheated. So we're gonna throw those into the oven, and we're gonna let those bake for 25 minutes until they're golden brown. In the meantime, we want to go ahead and make our rolls are in the oven, and we need to make our glaze to go and our frosting to go on top of them. So I want you to take 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. We're going to toss it into a microwave safe bowl. Here, we're going to microwave that and melt it. We've got our melted butter here. Pour in some maple flavoring, a few tablespoons of milk here, powdered sugar, whisk that together. Yeah, so that's really nice. That's a nice thick frosting. So we'll just set this aside and have it ready to go when our rolls come out of the oven. Okay, so I told you earlier that I had made a half batch, and that's what we used to make out the rolls that are actually in the oven right now. But on the video tonight, we actually made a full batch, and I want you to see what that looks like when it is raised to double inside of the bowl. So it is looking fantastic, and it's amazing, and it's so happy, and it's a nice little warm place here. When we take the lid off, and you can see this has raised to a beautiful double. We could even let it go probably even a little bit longer if we wanted to. But because I'm going to use this later, I'm going to go ahead and stick this in the refrigerator. But it is a beautiful, and you can see that it just bounces right back. You lightly touch it and it just bounces right back, which is wonderful. So it has a beautiful finish to it, everything like that. So I'm going to throw this into the refrigerator, and I'm going to use it later this week here at our house for dinner rolls or for cinnamon rolls or something like that. But just wanted you to see what that full batch looks like so that you know what yours should look like when it starts to raise. Okay, y'all, we're back. You can probably hear the treadmill in the background. My husband's down on the treadmill, so if you hear a wee, 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 that's the treadmill, because you know he's on the treadmill because he's gonna have cinnamon rolls. So everybody always says to him, how in the world do you not weigh 6,000 pounds living with her? That's how. He's on the treadmill at the moment. But our rolls are just about ready to come out of the oven, and we're going to get ready to take those out and frost them with our maple frosting that we have here from earlier. One of the ways that I think is a really simple way to frost them is get out your handy dandy Pampered Chef cookie scoop, and we're just going to scoop the frosting right into little blobs on top, and then we're going to use our handy dandy Pampered Chef spreader and spread out the frosting. So get a couple of those tools out. If not, you can just use a pastry brush and brush it over the top of them too, or just a good old knife. But if you do have a couple of those tools, it'll make it really handy for you in doing this. So our timer went off. Let's get these babies out of the oven. They look so good. I mean, check that out, y'all. I mean, they look so good. So good. So they are gooey, and you can see the brown sugar and everything has kind of oozed out in places of some of them, so you get this caramelization and this crispiness and some of that, so it's ooey gooey deliciousness. So like I said, this was like a half batch of the dough, made about 7 rolls, and you can see they totally just spread out and filled this container, this pan. So we're going to take our frosting, and it's nice and thick, which is going to be great because these are piping hot, and it's going to get those nice and melty when we put it on. So we're just going to scoop it, plop our little scoops of frosting down on top. I made just a small batch of frosting since we didn't have a full batch of cinnamon rolls. But there's still plenty of frosting to go around here. My goodness, gooey deliciousness. We're just going to take our spreader, you use a knife, whatever, and just spread that right on top of these. I mean, whoo, hurt me, y'all. If you like less frosting, more power to you. But I am one that I do like me some frosting on my cinnamon rolls. Spread that out. Hurt me, y'all. Whew. On a cool, crisp fall night, on a Friday night when you've got a fire pit going, and you've got some friends socially distancing with you with a fire pit, put these in the oven. Have this with a nice glass of coffee by the fire. Whether you put a little Irishness into your coffee or not is up to you. But let's pull one of these babies out and try it. Oh, look at that cinnamon roll right there. Look at that roundness. Oh my gosh, goodness, ooey gooey goodness. The maple, the brown sugar, the cinnamon, it's just screaming fall, y'all. I need a cup of coffee to deal with it. That dough just melts in your mouth, and man alive, delicious comfort food at its finest on a cold, cool, crisp fall evening. Hello, delicious. So, thanks for joining me here in Mama Fin's kitchen. I appreciate y'all sticking with me, hanging with me in my absence. We'll try to be better about this. And if you like what you saw, there's a little subscribe button down in the corner. Hit that little subscribe button to get notified when we put new videos out. You can also check out the full recipe for this on my blog. It's at lfinson.blogspot.com. Full recipes there and a link to a printable version as well. So stick with me. We'll be back a little bit sooner this time. I'll try not to make it 4 weeks in between videos this time around. If you like what you see, comment below. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. And we'll see you the next time here in Mama Fin's kitchen. Y'all stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and be kind to one another. Have a good one, y'all. See you later.